One of Logic's features that I really like is its pitch correction using flex pitch. And it works in the same way as Melodyne and Antares Autotune, which can cost you hundreds of dollars. And I think the results are just as good. And there's a really quick and easy way for you to manually correct the pitch of a vocalist. Because if you use Autotune plugins, which you do get with this, here we can see pitch correction. We have this type of Autotune plugin. They often sound bad, and the much better way to do it is manually using flex pitch. So the first thing we're going to do is click this button up here, show/hide flex, and we can also press Command F. Now if it hasn't already been analyzed, you just click this button again and that will analyze it, and make sure this is set to flex pitch. And what you can see here is a piece of vocal that I just recorded, so apologies for this, but have a listen. Oliver James washed in the rain no longer. Oliver James washed in the rain. So these lines here denote the vibrato, and that's me kind of doing a I forget what it's called, a slide up to the note. And then here you can see where I'm kind of going off pitch at the end there, kind of doing a lot of vibrato here, going a bit sharp at the end. So you can see where the pitch of your voice is going. So to correct this, the best thing to do is to go through and do it manually. You can just control click anywhere on here and do set all to perfect pitch. Let's have a listen. Oliver James washed in the rain no longer. So what that's done is actually moved the whole notes in pitch. Because if we go back to original, you can see where these little gaps are in the window show that I'm slightly out of pitch. So I can. So essentially it does that for you. So I can do set all to perfect pitch. Sometimes that sounds right, sometimes it doesn't. I prefer to just go through and manually do the ones that are really bad. But for now, let's stick with that and let's go over the top just so you can hear how this sounds when you go a bit over the top to get perfectly in tune vocals. So there's many ways that we can play with the tone. If I set it back to original, we can either grab these to move the notes up by a whole semitone. Let's have a listen. James. So you can hear that's moved it 2 semitones up. James. So if someone's a whole semitone out, you can move it with that hand tool. But normally, if you hover over this top middle one, we can do fine pitch. So each of these little circles relates to a slightly different parameter. So on the top left, we have pitch drift on this side. So this is kind of how we're going into notes. On the top right, we have pitch drift coming out of the note. So here, for example, I probably want to move that pitch drift, but it might sound okay. The middle one is fine pitch. This is how we move things perfectly in pitch. Bottom left is gain, so we can turn certain notes up or down. Bottom middle is vibrato, so this dictates how much vibrato there is, how much we fluctuate from the middle note. You can increase it. James washed it. It sounds something like that, or you can completely reduce it. James and that's when it starts to sound unnatural. And if you want to get that kind of T-Pain sound, all you need to do is get rid of all the vibrato so that it's just perfectly in tune the whole time. So we don't want to do that. Let's set all of these back to original pitch. And undo all of those. So you can also right click on a particular note and just set that to perfect pitch. If you notice anything that's particularly out, like this one for example, I can just right click or control click and set to perfect pitch. But what I'm going to do now is just check the fine pitch. If anything's out, that one's out a bit. And what I'll do now is go through word by word and correct them. Oliver James. Oliver James. So you can already hear that sounding kind of unnatural. Oliver James washed in the rain. James washed in the rain no longer. So that's kind of tailing off a bit badly. Longer. Oliver James washed in the rain. So something strange going on here. The rain. Washed in the rain. Washed in the rain. Washed in the rain. Washed in the rain. You can also see if you move sideways, you can move the timing slightly, but you need to be careful with that because that can sound unnatural. Washed in the rain. Washed in the rain. So this note here, I'm kind of doing a bit of a slide so I can try and correct that. Washed in the rain. But now you can hear I've already gone over the top. So let's just go back to the beginning and just correct any notes that are really bad. So here we are. Let's just fix this trail off. Washed in the rain, no, washed in the rain no longer. And this trail in, I think, is a bit off. No longer. Rain. Oliver James washed in the rain no longer. Once you finish editing, just hit Control F and it will hide all of that. So you can spend plenty of time experimenting with that. It can be really good. Just remember to keep it subtle unless you want to go for that T-Pain sound where it's really obviously auto-tuned, and then you can just remove the vibrato. If you're working in a busy session, you can also double click to open the audio file editor and you can do your flexing in there. You just hit the flex tool and make sure it's on flex pitch. And again, we can use all the same tools we just used to alter the pitch.